All in favor?
Passes 5-0. Thank you.
All right, we need approval for the agenda and the consent agenda.
Second.
All in favor?
Passes 5-0.
All right, communication. This portion of the agenda is available to the public to address the board on any issue that is not on the agenda. Maximum time allowed for any speaker is 3 minutes. LSEA? CSEA? People wishing to address the board? Correspondence?
No.
The only thing I would like to just share with the board is, as the board president, I did receive a memo from the County Office of Ed regarding our review of our budget, which got rave reviews in terms of us being pretty financially solvent and accurate, but they are cautioning things regarding the unstable situation with LCS, not unstable, I should say, the concerns that LCSF is new, and that there's some things on the horizon with Obamacare, or the Affordable Care Act that we know, and some things going on with CalSTRS and CalPERS. So just to be aware of that. Okay. Board Superintendent Communications?
Sorry.
Sure.
Okay. Since the last time we met, I attended the Articulation Committee meeting. I went to the Flynn dinner. I went along with the superintendent to the conference for servicing at-risk youth in our schools. I went down to Lindemar Beach and spent some time with the Ocean Shore students doing the beach day for Oceans Week. I went to the Cabrillo open house, to the Pacifica School Volunteers Awards thing, to the 21st Century Stakeholders Meeting. Came here along with the CBO to open up the packets for the food service RFPs. Went to the Ocean Shore open house. Went to the breakfast for the Professional Development Day at IBL. Attended our work study. Attended another meeting with the City Articulation for Ortega School, and then attended the CSEA LSEA Health Benefits presentation at Valmar.
Are you on staff?
we thought he was for a while.
Yeah, I was with Richard at a couple of city liaison meetings. I got to participate in the principal interview process for IBL, which was, I think we'll get to later. I went to the Elna Flynn, and I think it's worth commenting. I was thinking about how many years I've been going to the Elna Flynn, and the fact that I think I started at year 3, which was really terrifying when I did the math. But, you know, I think if I were to ask anybody who wants to know what this district is like, or any prospective employee or parent, I tell them to come to that dinner. And you would see, and that's such a fantastic representation of this community and the support for education. The number of, you know, we're honoring the parent volunteers and a lot of times the non-parent volunteers in this, but the number of staff members that come, you know, that pay out of their own pocket to come on an evening to celebrate the people who come volunteer was pretty moving, and I really enjoyed going. Got to go to San Mateo with some of the gang here for the Kent Awards for the Sunset Ridge was a winner. That was another great night of support. Went to the PSV volunteer event, study session, liaison committee. So not as much as Richard, but I tried. He sets a standard that's ridiculous for the rest of us.
I went to Board Member Action Day and spoke with our legislative representatives about issues of concern to schools. The Cabrillo I was at the Cabrillo Open House, the work study on the LCAP, a CPAC meeting also about the LCAP, I guess we're calling it the alignment meeting with the PTOs and PAF. I met with Josie and Gwendolyn Holden about the Prop 39 money and who we're going to have to help us figure out how to spend those monies. And it's not here yet, but Saturday is the PEFathon, so I just wanted to remind people that exists, and it's not too late to sign up or sponsor somebody who is, and make sure that they give the golden, is it a golden sneaker? They give a golden sneaker to the school that has the most signups. So there's your motivation.
Well, I'll see you at the PEFathon. Last year you ran fairly early, and I walked a little bit later. Yeah, when did I walk? Lena didn't make it all the way through. Yeah, that's my girl. And just signed up last night. Made sure I got signed up. So I did a lot of those events with you. Tried to do the BMAD with Matt, but they couldn't quite get our timing right. They had to have a meeting exactly at the only hour. I couldn't get there. Ocean Shore Open House. I do a lot of the math meetings, so Siva and I have been traveling together a lot to conferences. One being the Shell Center Conference, where the people from Nottingham, England came and talked to us about formative assessment lessons and how to implement them and what they mean. And that was very good for moving us forward with our understanding of what goes on in the Common Core math. And then was at the Silicon Valley Community Foundation math placement meeting, and that was looking at what our North County agreement has been about placement, and everybody was very impressed with what we've been doing. And then looking at other people's placements that don't seem as well thought out as ours, so we looked really good. And also went to a Silicon Valley Math Initiative meeting, networking meeting with Siva again last week, where we listened to the guy who wrote the 5x8 card and got our information about how to implement and how to understand what administrators should be looking for in a classroom that has Common Core math implemented, what kind of things that they will see. You shouldn't see students sitting quietly at their desk with their hands folded. They should be very noisy classrooms with a lot of activity and a lot of discourse. And so we're going to be looking at something new in math education, and it's not just copying down procedures and stuff. So it's all real exciting stuff. So it's fun to do that stuff with Siva. And also went with Richard to the health benefits presentation, which was very good, and they were excited we were there. And so I don't know if there may have been a few more things, but that's all I could copy from my calendar very quickly.
Okay, well, I was participated in the principal interview, and that's coming up a little bit later. Loved Elm Flynn. It was just so great to see everybody. It was just so wonderful to see everybody celebrating together. It was just a great event. And then the PSD work study on budget last week.
So having the opportunity to attend many of the same events. Last night we did have our beginning band concert at IBL, and that was really fun to attend. It's just amazing how the students can grow in such a short period of time. I also wanted to share out about Sue Beckmeyer, who won an award from CSEA called the Golden Bear Award. And so it was really wonderful to see how she represents our district among the classified School Employees Association. And it was a large population from, I want to say, Santa Cruz area all the way up through to this northern part. So it was really a nice opportunity to share with Sue. And last but not least, we did have our stakeholders meeting. I don't know if there's a better name for it. I'm sure looking for one, but
Maybe an acronym?
an acronym. It's hard when you have PTO, PEF, and all of those things rolled into one. But one of our hopes is to move to a level of collaboration and communication. So I think there were a couple of board members who are representing us. Cabinet was there. The schools were all represented. And PTOs and PEF, our foundation. And I think what it does, it allows us all to hear the same information and ask questions at the same time. So our hope is to kind of move to that real collaborative structure and piece.
Okay, great. All right, so we have 3 presentations tonight. The first one is very exciting. We want to introduce our new principal, Dan Little, who will be heading up Ingrid B. Lacey School.
Okay. So this involved an inclusive process that incorporated HR with all of the IBL stakeholders, finding all the right characteristics of what that IBL principal should be all about. A multi-leveled interview process, which I'm sure Dan can speak to. And we finally found the principal for IBL to start July 31st for the 2014-15 school year. So congratulations to Dan, and he has a few words to share with us tonight.
Good evening. I wanted to take this opportunity to thank you for welcoming me to Pacifica School District and the family here. I look forward to starting my work here in Pacifica and at Ingrid B. Lacey Middle School and joining the wonderful community there. I've had the great fortune and experience to experience the sense of community that Pacifica has to offer for many years through my wife's work at Sunset Ridge, and I am absolutely thrilled to be able to contribute as a member to the Pacifica School District. I really want to take a minute to thank everyone involved in the hiring process and those who helped me to bring me on board. Dr. Avila has been incredibly supportive throughout the entire process, making himself available to answer questions and give information and clarify things for me. That's been a wonderful support. And I'd also like to thank my wife, Debbie, for a 5th grade teacher over at Sunset Ridge, for encouraging me to apply for the position. Her support and encouragement has, throughout the whole transition, meant the world to me. And I just hope to make her, the families, the students, and the staff at IBL, and everybody here in Pacifica proud. Thank you very much.
Well, welcome. We're so glad you're here.
Thank you.
Yep. All right, our next presentation is Youth-Led Anti-Bullying Campaign from Jefferson Union High School District.
Yes, it's my pleasure to introduce Shaquille Ali, who many of you may know. He is not here as a trustee from Jefferson Elementary School District, but he is here as a coordinator of a program that he is doing in Jefferson High School District about youth-led anti-bullying campaign. So with that, and we're not connected.
All right, well, thanks for the opportunity to present this evening. I regretfully was not able to have the youth come because it's summer break for them now. And actually a lot of the students who were involved in this project were actually seniors, and so they've graduated and moved on. However, I just wanted to show this project to the board here and to the district to let you know what opportunities may be available for this district. I have a relationship with Mills Peninsula Health Foundation, and we received a grant from State Farm to do anti-bullying work in the schools. So for now, they've chosen the high school district, but they would like to support all the feeder schools as well.
Okay. Is that it?
All right, so I'll just read.
That's okay.
I'll read a little bit about it, and I'll kind of set it up for you. So the Mills Peninsula Health Services African American Community Health Advisory Committee, it's a long acronym, Ask Academy, and the Jefferson Union High School District were selected by the State Farm Insurance Company and the Youth Advisory Board to develop a youth-led marketing campaign and peer support service to address teen bullying among the schools in the JUHSD. The marketing campaign involves the development of a PSA that will be featured to public and private groups. The students also received advanced training on peer-to-peer education and presentation skills. The overall goal of the project is decreasing bullying in this district and promoting a healthy, safe school environment and community.
We're getting there.
All right. I know
Now we
that
just-
there might be blocks on YouTube in the
Yes,
district.
no, so we're
All
getting
right.
We have the code, right?
All right.
We had two formats, the first one didn't work, unfortunately.
All right, sorry. All right, can you press pause real quick?
Oh,
All right, so just.
After all this, he gets to run it?
I just want to give you a little bit of backup about this. So the young people did all the filming, they did the acting. We had an all-day Saturday shoot. They came up with the idea for the story and everything. So without telling the secrets of it, basically they wanted to portray what they think is the most common form of bullying, which is cyberbullying. And they wanted to show how it happens in a very particular way in their school, where people take pictures and when they post them on Instagram, other people take those pictures and add words and images to it and try to shame them. So they wanted to show how a misunderstanding could turn into a tragic event. So you might want to put full screen too.
Okay. Yeah, we're gonna try that.
All right, thanks. Maybe refresh.
It's frozen.
Is it, oh,
Oh,
okay, good.
All right.
Is there volume or not?
Yeah, that's.
How about if we increase the volume first and then,
Yeah.
that seems to be what's,
I think we need more people telling Ray what to do. 'Cause
I don't think there's any sound right now.
This part.
but are the speakers
This
working?
part is very low. I don't know why it's 38 seconds. Oh, boy.
I think it's because we're trying to go through YouTube.
That, yeah. There's no hard copy or anything, but
I think he loaded some.
That's what I thought he did.
They couldn't get real clear.
We tried to put it in.
oh, is that,
Oh, there we go.
heard this. It left me here alone.
Yeah, I know what you mean. It's not fair, but, you know, it happens. Honestly. You know,
Honey, I didn't hear that. Superman. I'm gonna take their life just like we took his.
hey, don't take it too far, man. Do you want to be like that?
Yes, sir.
Alright, I mess up, but I'm not going to take someone else's life because he took his own. I have to do the same thing to mine.
If there's any question or comment.
Pretty powerful.
And the students, that was the students produced all of it.
Yeah, they did all of that. The only thing that they didn't do was the final editing. But they did the art direction. They actually helped build the set, that bedroom. They did everything pretty much. And that was their original story. So I don't know if you were following it, but so basically they were posing for a picture and the two gentlemen just happened to bump into each other, and that was turned into a big smear campaign and, you know, calling them bad names and whatnot. So the young man ended up overdosing on pills, and that was his younger brother. So but anyway, they were saying that those kind of situations really do happen a lot now, and that they thought that they could help bring more awareness to it.
That's great.
All right, thanks.
Thank you. Alrighty, our next item is a board curriculum display, Critical Thinking, hosted by Sunset Ridge.
Good evening. So I'm going to start with the IBL Display Board, and all the principals have written up a little scenario for you guys so you can understand what their schools are working on for critical thinking. Students at IBL have delved into aspects of the Common Core in all subject areas. Students tackle real-world problems and make connections to current events in their history and social studies classes. They use CPEM curriculum to explore deeper levels of thinking in their math class, while language arts students are using the reading writing workshop model to develop their critical thinking, problem solving, and analytical skills that will need to be successful. Students are able to apply those concepts that are embedded in our broad course of study in their science classes as well. Our science teachers have delved into the next generation science standards. The performance expectations in middle school blend core ideas with science and engineering practices and cross-cutting concepts to support students in developing usable knowledge across the science disciplines. This plays out in the lab that students create for their annual science fair using the scientific method. Representative of the science fair, we have an experiment posted that was performed by 7th graders Ella Spurlock and Salma Mazengad. They wanted to investigate whether the golden ratio, the idea that human beauty is recognized because of specific symmetrical ratios of facial features, was actually true. It involved a great deal of critical thinking about how to devise a system to rate these features and get the least biased results possible. They spent a considerable amount of time conducting research. Through lots of thought and trial and error, they came up with this experiment. It is one of the many ways that students demonstrate their ability to conceptualize a theory, test it, and communicate the results, all traits that Common Core curriculum emphasizes. The next display is Lindemar Education Center. Critical thinking is part of the daily school life and part of the classroom culture at LMEC. Students practice critical thinking through working in groups, making decisions, finding patterns, and through learning how to categorize and classify. On the display, you can see critical thinking process through the dialogue that happened as students were learning about life cycles of a butterfly. You can also see the creative avenues that teachers use to encourage critical thinking skills, such as teaching students how to mix colors and using marbles to explore patterns, movements, and shapes. Our next display is Valleymar. Valleymar students use their critical thinking skills with various activities and projects daily. Kindergarten students explore changing states of matter with a water absorption and color blending science experiments using polymer crystals. They had rich discussions, answered questions, made predictions, and wrote about what they learned. Primary students pushed their thinking in math by writing their own math problems and creating a model. Third grade students learned about life of an owl by dissecting an owl pellet and reconstructing the bones to find out what the owl eats. Eighth grade students spent time studying and creating analogies to help develop their comprehension of vocabulary and concepts, as well as improve their reasoning ability and their critical thinking skills. Several grades worked on research reports on various topics like plant life, animals, and influential people in history. These are some of the critical thinking highlights of Valleymar, but there are so many more. And now we move to Cabrillo. We're going to save the best for last. At Cabrillo, sorry. It's just because I get to present. At Cabrillo School, we're displaying just a small clue about the critical thinking strategies used throughout our school. Mrs. Welsh's class works collaboratively on projects that build on fine motor skills while also displaying school spirit. Their red and black orca represents finger paints, brush painting, and cutting skills. Mrs. Padilla's fourth graders created in-depth outlines about the gold rush that will be used for their multi-chapter books based on important time in California history. They also designed art that represents mathematical algebraic equations. In Mr. Katz's sixth grade class, students built puppets for their mystery shows. They built some puppets in the likeness of some of our teachers while filling out their cast with support players that included students, police officers, and other community members. Throughout the process, they were writing and refining their mysteries to keep the audience intrigued and on the edge of their seats. This is until the clues led them to the culprit in each story. Collaborative and individual work is in all of these endeavors assess the depth of knowledge and critical thinking that students need in order to move forward in their reading, writing, and math. Their ability to think critically and creatively is the key to their future in college and career. In short, they are acquiring the clues they need to be successful. Then we move to Ocean Shore. Ocean Shore's critical thinking display shows a few different elements of what kids at Ocean Shore have been up to lately. The first, under the green critical thinking sign, are two pictures of third graders facing the Common Core standards through the new SBAC testing system. The other picture is of first graders using ST Math and trying their hardest to move Gigi across each page as they learn math concepts. The rest of the board shows assorted activities during our most intriguing week of the school year, Oceans Week. We highlighted just a few activities that push kids to think critically about what they are learning. Several of the pictures show an activity that teacher Virginia does with her 4th and 5th grade class in preparation. They then share out with the school through the rotations. On one part of the hallway were problems as related to marine mammals, and the others were solutions. There's also substantial work done through lab experimentations during Oceans Week, as shown by the pictures of trash on the beach and the image of a group of students standing together testing density. The last picture is blue. In blue shows a game that was created by teacher Sheila for this year's theme for Oceans Week. As kids came through this rotation, they played a game that asked them to observe, think critically, and answer creatively to move their game piece forward. The 8 days of Ocean Week weaves together so many aspects of education. Pushing the kids to think critically about their environment and the oceans is one of the highest priorities. And then we have Ortega School. Ortega's critical thinking display represents Writers' Workshop published pieces from 3 classes. Prominently displayed is a student work from Mrs. Whitmire's second grade class. Her students read a variety of African folk tales about a tricky little spider named Anansi that they created, and then they created their own stories. Artwork on the cover was the depiction of what Anansi looked like. The snakes were created after the class talked about African Aboriginal art and how nature was used to create paint, thus the use of rust and ochre. As tribal peoples used sticks and didn't have brushes, the students also used sticks to paint their art, similar to pointillism used today. Ms. Fasanero's students created books during their study of nonfiction. The students generated a list of what they noticed in nonfiction books, then studied multiple anchor papers, and conducted a checklist of what nonfiction text features they didn't have in their own books. After writing their rough draft, they peer revised, edited with at least 3 different students using a checklist. Once they felt like they had done their best, it was time to publish and write the final copy you see here today. During the publishing party, volunteers read their nonfiction books to the class and pointed out their favorite text features that they included. Our third sample are colored poems from Miss Dillon's class that were part of the poetry unit of Writers' Workshop. After reading Hailstones and Halibut Bones by Mary O'Neill, the students deconstructed their text features. Then they analyzed how each color poem used 5 senses and had a bit of a story to it. From there, the class charted adjectives for the 5 senses and emotions and then put it all together into a poem from their hearts. Then we'll go back to Sunset Ridge. At Sunset Ridge, we build critical thinking and by encouraging questioning, rethinking, active listening, and finding answers using resources. In writing and reading workshops, students use a variety of critical thinking skills. Our 3rd graders are talking about social justice and looking for examples of social justice in the books they are reading. They are looking at how characters act, feel about important issues like discrimination, bullying, poverty, and other injustices people face. You can see their responses on their Post-its to see what they are thinking about. In math, teachers across grade levels use number talks to get students to classify, problem solve, and compare numbers. Critical thinking is a skill that can be taught and is most effectively taught when it crosses content areas and is relevant to students' lives. Sunset Ridge's primary goal is to equip every student to be successful critical thinkers. And that's it.
Thank you.
Thank you all for coming. Those are great presentations. All right, we are going to move on to district business. The first thing is the Ready Schools plans, is discussion, and then an action item.
So, we are here tonight to bring the Ready Schools plan to the board as part of our grant from the Silicon Valley Community Foundation. Christine Thorstensen is here to go over the progress we've made through this program and a look forward. And I believe we do have someone from the Silicon Valley Community Foundation here with her tonight.
Great. Well, thank you for having me. Do you have our little overview? You might want to. So it's been a great year continuing to work on the Ready Schools plan that Julie Lancel was such a big part of. And when she retired last year, passed it on to me. So we've been working throughout the year with a great team, and I just want to give you a few highlights of what we did this year, and then some idea of changes in the plan for moving forward, and then if you've got any questions about it. So our team this year, we met 4 times, and we had a very consistent team that had members from private preschools, the public preschools, district administration, teachers, kindergarten teachers, principals, and the school psychologist. This year, what we decided to do was meet at different schools. So we met here once, and then the 3 other meetings we met either at a preschool or an elementary school with a preschool attached. So we combined tours of the preschools and all the kindergarten classrooms each time we met. So it was a great opportunity for the preschools and the kindergarten teachers to get to visit each other's classrooms. We did invite preschool teachers and administrators to participate in training that's provided by the district or by the county office that is appropriate for the preschool level, and we did for the first time have some people take advantage of that offer. So we had 4 preschool people participate in different trainings throughout the year, which is a great start. We started this year a fall tour, kindergarten and TK tour, specifically just for the preschool directors and staff. And we had 6 preschool folks attend those, and they found them really helpful. So basically exactly the same tour that parents are offered in the fall, but this one is specifically just for the preschool directors and any teachers they want to bring. So they got a chance to ask the principals any questions and tour classrooms. We had our cross-visit program continue, and that means that we were offering opportunities for preschool teachers to partner and spend a half day in a kindergarten or TK classroom, or for a TK or K teacher to go and spend a half day in a preschool setting. We had 1 who took advantage of it the first year, and we had 2 this year, so we had a 100% improvement on that. But it was great. The 2 folks who did it really found it extremely helpful, and it's one of those things that once people enjoy doing it and they talk to their peers and explain how great it is. So I'm hoping we will continue that next year. The best thing we did this year, I think, that was really quite successful is twice in the year we had what I call the Ready Schools Team All Partners Gathering. So we invited all of the kindergarten, TK, principals, administrators, as well as all of the preschools and their administrators and teachers to come together and have some joint professional development and networking opportunities. And we were able to have representation from 18 of the local preschools throughout the year and all of the schools. So that was great. We really, for the first time, got most people excited about coming and talking with us. We also started a buddy program at Sunset Ridge, Ortega, and Valimar this year, and our hope is to do it at all of the schools for next year, pairing preschool that is either on-site or very close to the kindergarten classroom, so the kids were coming up, the pre-Ks were coming up and having snack time and story time. We just started it in the spring, and now that it's gotten started, we're hoping we'll be able to start earlier next year. We also, for the first time, we have all of the preschools, at least verbally now, they've agreed to participate in the pre-K to TK articulation form process, which is an assessment, 2-page assessment addressing social and emotional development and some academic skills that we are getting for every child entering kindergarten who attended a Pacifica preschool. And we've actually been able, in the last few days, I brought on a few more, so I think we have 23 preschools who at least have taken our form and are trying to fill them out for us. Unfortunately, about half of our kids either don't attend preschool or they don't attend preschool in Pacifica, but at least for the half that do, we're starting to be able to get this information so that K teachers are prepared before school starts, which is great. And we were able to run kickoff to kindergarten again, as well as kickoff to first grade and kickoff to second grade. So about 125 students received summer support as part of the program, which was wonderful. So moving ahead for next year, basically the plan is building on the success, so a lot of these activities are going to continue. We are restructuring the Ready Schools team simply to streamline it a little bit and make sure that there is representation from all of the elementary schools and a little bit more diverse representation from the preschools. And like I said, we're going to continue with our major activities. These were the things that the team themselves felt were the most valuable. And then there's a couple new activities. I'm very pleased to say that we have been awarded a grant from the Silicon Valley Community Foundation to implement the DRDP-SR in the TK classrooms. So, and unfortunately I don't have much more information to give you about that. They've just announced that, and I'm going on Friday to actually find out more details specifically about it.
What's a DRDP?
Oh, the DRDP. It is a school readiness, developmental readiness profile.
Okay.
There is one that is currently used at the preschool level that's mandated if it's a state preschool and other preschools use them. This one is specifically aligned with the Common Core curriculum and designed to be used in a TK or K classroom. And we structured our grant so that it'll be done. It's an ongoing assessment. It's an observational assessment. So there'll be an assessment period over the fall with coaching, and then a second assessment period in the spring. It'll be used as the foundation for parent-teacher conferences with families. It can produce real-time results that look very promising. So we're implementing it with there's a number of other communities that have been awarded the grant, so we'll be trying it this year. And then the other new thing is that we are going to be starting a parent-child activity group. These are for preschool-age children. We're going to hold one at Sunset Ridge and Ortega, and Learning Together from START, which is a program of Star Vista, is going to provide the play groups. They provide them for free, and they run for 6 to 8 weeks at a time. And the idea is that we'll be able to identify families with younger siblings who are probably not attending a preschool environment, and we'll be able to invite them to come to the free play group at Sunset Ridge or Ortega, and ideally get them perhaps into a preschool program. So reach out that way. And the only other thing really to note from a budget perspective is that the Ready Schools grant in the past was $20,000. We anticipate this year that we will be awarded another grant. We're right in the midst of the proposal process. But we know that it's going to be reduced by $5,000. And then after that, we've been told that the funding from First Five is uncertain. So they funded it for a number of years, and we will probably have one more, but then after that, we aren't sure where it's going to be. So that's where we're at with the Ready Schools plan. Is there any questions about any of the activities?
Just as a comment, though, it's very exciting to see the program grow. I was able to attend the very first, I guess it was a breakfast meeting years ago with Julie Wenzel when the preschool owners or operators came, and there were not that many of them that showed up that particular day. So it's exciting to see the program grow and include more of the schools here in Pacifica.
Yeah, and I think that from the preschool, they really enjoy that we're including them in the professional development, and that we want to communicate with them, and that we really value their opinion. And they're just coming on board the more and more we participate with them. So, and just before I finish, I would like to introduce Pat Flynn, Sasso from the Silicon Valley Community Foundation. She wanted to say just a few words.
So I was just going to introduce myself, but I don't need to do that. I'm here representing Silicon Valley Community Foundation's Center for Early Learning, and we just want to tell you how thrilled we are that Pacifica School Board continues to support the Ready Schools work. And through Christine's leadership, your Ready Schools team has made a lot of progress very recently. Since 2010, the foundation has granted over $75,000 to the Pacifica Collaborative to support pre-K articulation and alignment, and that really is helping your young children's transition. And the foundation's also really happy to have supported the Kickoff to Kindergarten summer camps for more than 10 years, as well as provide and partner with your early learning sites with the Raising a Reader take-home book bag program supporting early literacy in your schools. And lastly, we just want to express our gratitude to you, Dr. Tuckloff, for your tremendous leadership in pre-K alignment and early learning. Thank you.
Well, I think we also have to say thank you to Silicon Valley for believing in us and giving us the money to be able to do what we've done. And as Richard said, we've really come a long way with connecting our preschools into our schools. And that not only does that help our kids, but it builds community in our, which is an important aspect of what we want to do as well. So thank you.
You know, if I could add to that, I mean, I think Pat wouldn't mind if we say that she's a member of this community.
Oh, yeah.
So, and that Silicon Valley supports a lot of other projects in this community in a lot of different ways. The Tribune Holiday Fund and the support that goes out to those organizations, Resource Center, the Library Foundation. It's really important, the connection of the foundation to this community, really in a lot of different ways, is really important, and it really does support the community. And I just want to thank you and thank the foundation.
All right, this is an action plan. We need to approve the plan.
Move approval of the district ready schools plan.
Second.
All in favor?
Passes 5-0. Thank you.
All right. All right, the next item of business is the Health Benefit Committee update. It's information and discussion item.
Okay, good evening, Board of Trustees, and I'm here with my co-chair, Patty McNally. And we represent the Health Benefits Committee, but we do have some of the committee members in the audience tonight, and I'd like to point them out because they have stuck with the committee all year, and they've put a lot of time and effort in listening to the different organizations. Representing LSMA, we have Mark Lorenzen, and representing District Office, we have Josie Peterson, and representing Site Administration, we have Debbie Skiles. And representing LSEA, we have Debbie Little. And then also was representing CSEA, we had Sue Beckmeyer and Lisa Kern. Okay, and they couldn't be with us tonight. And then we had Angie Acuna, who represented classified staff, and we had Moy Scott, who represented our confidential employees. So there you have it. And then there's the two of us. And here we go. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry. I was ready to jump into our PowerPoint. Okay.
You want me to say it? Yes, please do. This is supposed to be together. Yes.
He told me. I'm just going to repeat a few things because I want to make sure that the committee heard this. Good evening, I'm Patty McNally. Thank you for introducing me, Ray. From Ocean Shore School, and Ray and I, like he told you, are the co-chairs of the Health Benefits Committee. And I just want to say that I feel very fortunate to be part of a group of people who are so passionate about working to acquire information about affordable, quality health care for all district employees. As you know, this committee, like Ray told you, is a balanced number of all employee groups who often sit at the table together at negotiations. These people made a commitment to gather and disseminate information to all unit members. Last week, CSEA and LSEA held a meeting to present this information to our membership, and Mark has talked to LSMA and gave them the information as well. So tonight, we're here to present it to the board. I would like to publicly thank my co-chair, Ray, because he really tried to keep us on the straight and narrow. Always. And of course, Sue Beckmeyer, who unfortunately is not here tonight, but who kept up with all the presentations and our conversations, Mark, that got, and turned them into copious notes. These notes helped us create our final document and presentation. In closing, I would like to thank every member of this team that volunteered their hours to invest in capturing current information, which we fondly call a moving target, but we did the best we could. So at this time, I'm going to turn it back to my co-chair.
Okay.
To do it.
So what we're going to present to you this evening is a summary of our findings from the different organizations and what we learned throughout the year. We shared this with you at a prior presentation, the purpose, and Patty sort of captured that in her opening statement. We did establish goals as a committee that we referred to throughout the year. And we have met now for an entire year, starting back with May 2013, and you can see all the way up until tonight's presentation, our final presentation to the board. So the process. We first met with an organization called Checker, then Keenan, then CalPERS, then CBT. But as you can see, Affordable Care Act was looming around us the whole time that we were listening to the different organizations. Committee findings. Checker stands for the California Education Coalition for Healthcare Reform. And we first started collaborating with the organization of Checker because they gave us those guiding principles to go off of. What to look for, what to listen to, what types of questions should we be asking the different healthcare organizations when they present it to us. But most importantly, they really stress the importance of us continuing to search for quality care for our employees in the district. And we met with Keenan and Associates. This was on September 17th. And Keenan did a very in-depth presentation on the Affordable Care Act. Very overwhelming because a lot of new information that we were digesting in a very short amount of time. As a broker, they can negotiate a great plan for the first year, but what we found from Keenan is those rates could go up thereafter. So we might get a good deal that first year, but it's almost like an adjustable home loan. Boom, it could explode in front of us. CalPERS came and presented to us, and this is the organization we currently are working with our health benefits. And the one thing that we learned is if we stop using CalPERS, we are embargoed for 3 years if we were to switch. And that's very important to know because, and I'm sure our employees are aware of this now after going through this presentation. We walk away from them, we can't go back to them for 3 years. Bay Area healthcare rates are $300 to $500 per month, employee higher than Southern California and the Central Valley area. That's another aha moment that we had when CalPERS was presenting to us. CalPERS does expect their rates to be more competitive because of their increase with HMO availability. So we do have a nice buffet of plans to choose from. Then CVT came out to us. This is California's Valued Trust. This is another health organization. We found that it's really unproven here in the Bay Area. It's definitely primary focus is Central Valley agencies that they collaborate with. CVT came out around March. They work mainly with small school districts, but when we put them to the test and said, what would the cost be, they wouldn't give us their rates. We sat here right in the boardroom, and even Mark really put on the pressure that day. And there was no rates that would be given. And so that was, it's like buying a car, but not really knowing how to drive it and how it's going to help us in any way. With CVT, another thing to remember is 100% of the employees are required to join. So there's no in lieu or spouse plans allowed. Because of Affordable Care Act. We have that same feeling that Macaulay Culkin did in that famous movie back then. It's sort of that oh no feeling because Affordable Care Act is still, it's like the plane is being built as it's being flown in the air. Things keep getting added and changing quickly, and we noted some dates of some major milestones that were occurring with the Affordable Care Act. Point is, Affordable Care Act is always going to have an impact no matter what organization we choose. It will have an impact. So, our findings. The Health Benefits Committee, after a year of research and presentations and information gathering, believe that continuing with CalPERS will give the district best access to affordable, quality health care. And we wanted to emphasize quality health care because that's what Checkers told us back in May, a year ago. Always look for the quality health care for your employees. Thank you. Thank you. Any questions? Patty, don't walk away.
All right.
We become very, very close.
You're going to let me
Not
go?
good question.
Oh, thanks. Now we're going to do.
Did CalPERS give an idea of when their rates would be changing?
I don't recall any
No.
specific date.
I think Josie knows. Do it once a year.
The rates change every year around May or June. You'll see it in the newspaper any day now. The CalPERS rates will be published, and then we'll get our rates. And the rates are effective January 2015. So we get the rates about this time, and then they bump up in January. So it gives us time during the open enrollment process in September, October. So when those rates are published and we inform people of what the new amounts are for the next fiscal year, people can make the changes as they want to before January hits.
So they're expecting a change because of new plans that are developed.
Every year, CalPERS evaluates their plans. For example, 2 years ago, they added Blue Shield debt value in an attempt to offer a more affordable plan, because Blue Shield is like a Cadillac plan. So 2 years ago, they added Blue Shield net value. This past year, they added Anthem Blue Cross, and a lot of people switched to that plan. It was very comparable as far as quality, but the cost was less. So I think every year, CalPERS is looking at what plans they offer and making some adjustments. I'm not sure how they negotiate that with the brokers, but we don't have a choice. Whatever CalPERS it puts forward is what our district offers.
Eric?
Do you have any sense for, in terms of the Affordable Care Act, any highlights of the biggest impact for the district off of
We're not breaking any rules, which is the good news, but we do have substitutes in our district, and we need to be very much aware of how many hours they work per week. I believe it's 30 hours or more, and we need to offer them some form of plan. So that's a tracking system that we are developing to ensure that we don't continue to break any rules.
So I don't know if you guys are familiar with Affordable Care Act. I'll just give you a very brief summary because it's pretty, there's a lot of details. So if you're an employer of over 50 employees, you have to order affordable health coverage. And there's, they did move the deadlines back. It was January 2014. Some of it's moved to 2015. There's two types of penalties. The first penalty is the big penalty. If you do not offer affordable health insurance to your employees, then you could be penalized. And I always get the numbers mixed up between the $2,000 and the $3,000 figure, but $2,000 per employee. So we have 300 employees. That's like the big penalty for not complying with all the regulations. And there's, detailed regulations and notices that you have to send out to your employees, notices to the substitutes. There's a lot of work behind complying with that penalty, and definitely we're going to make sure we comply. We have a lot of guidance from the County Office of Ed in that area. Then the one that Ray is referring to is the lesser penalty, and that is if you don't offer people who work 7 to 8 hours or 30 hours per week, you need to offer affordable health coverage. And the difficulty with that penalty is we can send a letter and we can offer the health insurance, but they can still go to the California Health Exchange. And we don't know if people are going to go to the exchange and buy insurance. The other thing that is a big unknown is there's a formula that you can't calculate. It's impossible because you have to know what their household income is. And there's a calculation based on their household income if we ordered affordable coverage. And we can't do that calculation. So if they go to the exchange and they buy the policy from the exchange, we could get a bill for $2,000. The three, okay, good. So I got those two mixed up. So that's the 3,000. And with that one, in looking at it, if you look at, if we gave them a policy, our policies are, for a single person, 6,000 to 7,000, 24,000 for a family. So the $3,000 penalty is actually less for us than actually paying for the insurance.
Oh, dear.
But I mean, that's just very simplistic summary. There's a lot more that goes into the Affordable Care Act than what I just said.
Can I follow up? You had mentioned, you used the phrase Cadillac plan before, which triggered that. I know at one point in the regulations, there was going to be a penalty under the Affordable Care Act for both the employee and well, I've heard it several different ways. And that was out a couple of years. Is that still hanging out there?
2018 is the last one.
A tax, right, I'm sorry.
The tax.
Is that same thing? Yeah, I guess so. Is that still coming?
Yes, and the employee, the individual, is for when they don't have health insurance. Somehow they're going to have a tracking system, so if I don't either get insurance from my company or I don't go to the exchange, when I do my income taxes, there's going to be a tracking system and I'm going to pay a penalty. That's the individual penalty.
But I thought there was a penalty, a tax on if you had too good a health care.
Yes, and that part I'm not clear on that tax yet and what all the rules are on that, but there is a penalty on that as well.
Our CTA representative said at the last time we talked to her that that what you're talking about is true, but that was not going to be coming around until around 2018. So that gives us a little breathing room.
Because would that not then factor into the discussion of the types of plans we offer if people are going to actually wind up paying a tax on the plan that they get? Or
It's my understanding with CalPERS, they do not have them labeled as Cadillac, whatever. So,
who knows?
Who knows?
Okay, thank you.
That's what
Matt,
Probably.
did I see your hand wave a little bit there?
Yeah, I mean, there's probably no way to know, but that's what I was going to ask, is the plans that are currently offered under CalPERS, is there any way of knowing whether they qualify? Obviously the ACA qualified plans is like bronze, silver, or gold, and then platinum if it's more than gold, but is there any way of knowing where our current plans fall in that
It's hard
system?
to say. At this time, I haven't seen enough detail to know. We do have a couple plans that are fairly expensive, so I would guess they would be in that range. But CalPERS will have to make adjustments as the years go on.
So one of your goals was to create and share a spreadsheet identifying each of the plan options, blah, blah, blah. I assume you created and shared that, and that's how you came to your decision that CalPERS was the...
Right, our last meeting was basically putting our own spreadsheet in front of us and looking at the pros and cons of each plan, and then all of us as a committee coming to the consensus that CalPERS was still the strongest route to go.
Matt?
Can we see that spreadsheet?
Oh, it was an informal spreadsheet. It wasn't anything that we created for the purpose of tonight's presentation, but it was a goal that we wanted to make sure that we had everything in front of us the last time that we met.
Oh, okay. It just said share, so I thought maybe we could share.
Right.
Right. No, obviously you
So
can
they
share
weren't
it, they won't
prices.
tell you.
Once that we did, it was an advantage to people.
Interesting sales technique. I wonder if they get a lot of business.
And then once you make the lead, they don't give you the price, and then once you make the lead, then if you don't like it, CalPERS doesn't.
They can't go back.
Interesting way to sell something, not telling you what it costs.
Do we have a sense of how many families are in the various types of plans?
Now, we do have a spreadsheet, thanks to Moy, for that.
Okay.
So the district has that, and I'm sure Moy would be willing to share it with you. Yeah, it's the breakdown of every employee, their benefits, what type of plan.
So we have a sense of who takes what plans.
Exactly.
And by category, and then the single percent, or single pair, single person, family, two.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Anything else?
Tremendous amount of work. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
I'm gonna need to step up for a minute.
You want to take a recess, or?
No, you guys can.
She may not be back.
Oh.
Or maybe not much. She said she was going to leave. No. I guess we wait till the room clears. Joan clears a room, doesn't she? Wow. All right, next thing on the agenda, Chocolate Mountain. Joan has left me a note saying that she was going to leave at the end of this presentation anyway, and I think she's had to hurry her leaving, and so she's not going to be back for the rest of the meeting, as she's indicated. I mean, she'll be back for her stuff, but I don't think she's going to participate in the rest of the meeting.
So at the last board meeting, we did our annual child nutrition food service update, and during the discussions of the update, we talked about chocolate milk, because chocolate milk in our district was eliminated 2 years ago because of the higher sugar levels and the concern about, childhood obesity and all that. And over the last 2 years, we've still had a lot of students and staff and, people asking for the chocolate milk back. So there's been more discussion about it, and at the last board meeting, we were talking about putting the chocolate milk back. We brought it back 1 day a week a year ago, and we were talking at the last board meeting about bringing it back 5 days a week. And so we just wanted to bring this item after people have had time to think about it, and give the public people an option to come and discuss. Bring it back again and kind of go over the pros and cons and give you the details on the sugar and the sodium and the calories, and talk about whether or not we should bring it back 5 days a week. So as we discussed last time, the vendors have now reformulated the chocolate milk. So where there used to be a larger amount of sugar, you can see on the chart there that there isn't a huge difference any longer in the sugar content between the chocolate milk and the 1% white milk and the non-fat milk, and same with the sodium levels, and then it's kind of cut off at the bottom, but the calories as well. So Ray, if you could just please move it down a little bit. There has been a significant decline in the consumption of chocolate milk, and you can see by school how much the decrease in consumption is. And the concern that we had last time was that students are not being well hydrated because they're choosing even if they take the milk, a lot of our kitchen staff are seeing that they're not actually drinking the milk. And so that was a concern of ours, that they're not getting enough fluids and staying hydrated. And then Ray, if you don't mind moving it down a little bit more to the next slide, we listed the pros and cons of adding, the chocolate milk back. So the pros is the students will be getting their vitamin A, their D, their B12, and calcium, potassium, and protein. The cons are there is 3 grams more sugar in the chocolate milk than the white milk. They'll stay hydrated. The cons are they will continue to develop the habit of preferring the sweetened beverages over the unsweetened beverages. And then pros, it's widely accepted by students, increase in milk sales. I thought it was interesting because somebody mentioned at one of our meetings that the students at Cabrillo wrote persuasive essays about the chocolate milk. So I was interested in that, so I talked to the principal and the staff also. The staff are here too if you have questions. Darcy and Rhonda from Cabrillo School. And it was an assignment, it was a reading prompt, and so the students didn't really have a choice in what, they drew straws, and you're pro, and you're
Yes, I talked to Tom.
yeah, because that was interesting when I heard about it, like, oh, what, they don't want chocolate milk? But really, the 5th graders all want chocolate milk, but that was it was a writing assignment, and they had to follow the directions. So that's the discussions and where we left off last time, and just wanted to see if people had further thoughts and if they have further questions of staff. Richard?
I was the one that had asked for this to be put on the agenda, and basically I had no problem with moving forward. I just wanted to provide a forum for anyone in the public to make comments if they had any, and seeing that none of them have shown up, I'm guessing that is telltale, that people no longer have an issue with this.
Yeah, I agree with Richard. I'm fully okay to move forward on it, but I would definitely support it, that we do it just public. When we make a change, we do it in public, and people have a chance to come in and comment on it. But I certainly support it. I'm comfortable with 5 days a week.
Yeah, same.
Yep. I think maybe we need to do it. We need to get kids drinking milk and potassium and sugar.
I think if the parents don't want them to drink chocolate milk, then that's their responsibility, not ours.
Yes.
Do you need a motion or just direction?
Direction for staff.
Just direction.
And they'll be starting
in the fall?
Yes.
Thank you. I guess we've got another week.
Yeah. Unless you've got a lot of chocolate. I guess you could sell it for the next week.
Right. Yeah, if you've got a lot of chocolate milk on hand, have at it for the next week.
Thank you for bringing it back, and thank you for doing the work to give us the information. I appreciate it.
All right, so next item is the Child Nutrition Management Consultant Services Request for Proposal. This is an information discussion item.
So we talked about this in January. When you have a consultant for food service, every 5 years you do need to go back out and do a request for proposal and accept bids. And so we did that this year. And this year was an unusual year because the state was really monitoring the process. So I feel like we're a little bit behind on bringing this item back to the board because it took so long for the state to actually approve our RFP. We turned it in November, and they didn't approve it until April. And then when you do the newspaper ads and everything, it takes time. So we did get the bids back, and thanks again to Darcy. We had a committee. Richard was there to help me open the bids, and then last week our committee convened, but not the full committee. We had Darcy from Cabrillo School and Lori from Ingrid B. Lacey School and Brenda, our account clerk, but we were not able to have the full committee review the bids last week, and so we decided that it would be best to take more time because they are pretty cumbersome too. Richard will tell you it's a lot of reading, and so just to give ourselves a little bit more time in reviewing the bids, there were 3 vendors, Sodexo, Chartwell's, and Southwest Food Service. And so you can see the committee members listed below. We're going to reconvene on Thursday and finalize our review process. And we have a guide sheet on how to rate the bidders, and we will bring a recommendation to the June 18th board meeting. And just to kind of, talk a little bit more about the program. In the beginning, I noted that the program was at a loss in 1999 when we first hired a consultant. And over all those years, we were able to break even or have a small surplus. But the last 2 to 3 years, we have been losing money in the program. And some of it's because of the stricter guidelines with the federal and the state. And some of it's, we were ahead of the curve. Pacifica School District met the guidelines before the state, some of the state guidelines, which are in effect this July. A good example is the whole wheat. That guideline is in effect July 1st, but we met that guideline last year. We were switching things over. So over the last 2 years, we have lost money. And because Sodexo has a minimum guarantee in their contract, they've been writing us a check of $40,000+ for the last 3 years to help our program break even. Before they submitted their bid, they did let me know that they can no longer offer that minimum guarantee, and they did state some reasons, and they said they'd be willing to sit down and go into more detail with me, but they said, your labor costs are really high, and maybe you need to look at the price that you're charging for your programs. And also our sales have been down. So that's something that as our committee convenes tomorrow actually we're convening, is going to be part of the discussion, is will we be able to run a break-even program next year? And even as a conservative measure, when I present the budget and one of the next items, I do show a loss in the food service program of about $45,000. And of course, we'll adjust that at first interim, but given the information that we have today, I just reflected that the program could be at a loss next year. So that's something that we'll be, thinking seriously about and in our decision making, and we'll be bringing back to the board on June 18th. So I don't know if at this time, if you have questions, not having our recommendation, if there's questions of us.
Just a couple quick. So the first is whoever we choose that would be effective starting in August.
Correct.
So okay, and that's so if we made a decision on June 18th, presumably I'm not making any assumptions, but if we did go with someone other than Sodexo, is that enough time for them to?
It's a very tight timeline, and there are some staff concerns about the transition plan this late in the year.
Okay. And then the other question in terms of lower sales, I know that's sort of like a national that's sort of a national problem, but I was kind of curious because I feel like Pacifica seems to be the kind of place where there's a tremendous amount of concern for healthy school lunches, which is why I think the full chocolate milk thing is an issue. So it seems like people would actually consider us meeting guidelines early to be a huge plus. And I was just wondering, I feel like that could be maybe like a PR type thing. Like maybe we just need to do more outreach to parents to let them know how much healthier the food is. I think like if I think back on what was considered school lunch when I was in school, I mean, I think that would nauseate people working in food service today. maybe people are just completely not aware of what it is that's being served in the cafeterias and how healthy it is, and maybe even, I don't know if it's feasible to like give the parents an opportunity like during the first week or so to come in and have a meal in the cafeterias and taste for themselves.
That's interesting, because that was some of the discussion that Darcy and I had about our program, that we feel like it's maybe lost some of the, we need to give it a little bit of a boost and some advertising and some PR and marketing, and I think that's a very good point. The other thing to think about is the healthier food is more labor intensive. So that's some of the things that we're going to be talking about with our committee.
Eric?
Well, just an observation off what Matt said is, I'm not sure that there's healthier food by the parent's description. Does that equate to kids wanting to buy it? May not be the same thing, and perhaps the advertising has to be directed to the kids, not the parents. So that's just an aside. My other question was, is it safe, and I hate to make assumptions, but is it safe to assume that the other two bidders will not be offering a guarantee either?
Without meeting with the committee and getting into the details, there is a guarantee on one of the vendors, and how much merit we can put into that is a committee discussion. So I can't answer that at this time.
Andrea?
So do our sister districts around us that have their own meal programs, are they seeing the same kind of losses that we are?
It's actually statewide and nationally the sales have gone down. Some of the districts I talked to have been contributing to the food service program over the years, and that's just, accepted that they make that contribution. We've been fortunate that we haven't had to.
I was listening to NPR the other day, and that was the topic. And particularly around whole grains was an issue, and that they were seeing in certain parts of the country various kinds of foods that the kids weren't accepting. Like in the Southwest, they were having a hard time with their whole wheat tortillas because it's very different than what they're getting at home. And the other place they cited was in the Southwest, they were having a really hard time with the whole wheat biscuits because it was different than what they were getting at home. So there's been, exactly. So the conversation around NPR was about the sales of food being down and kind of talking about the issue of are kids wanting to eat it, or they want something that's more familiar to them. But anyway, so it is a real national trend that, and in fact, I think is the FDA who's in charge of some of these regulations? USDA pulled back on their whole wheat pasta because they were having such a hard time getting even something that was edible, that was whole wheat, that had the consistency and things. So I know there's a lot of conversation going on if NPR is picking it up. Okay.
Thanks for working on it.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming.
Okay, all right. So we're on to local control accountability plan. This is a public hearing. It has to go at 8:30. Okay.
I see a bus pulling up.
Okay, so since it's 8:22, we'll hold off on that item because we need to do it after 8:30. So we'll move on to 2013 budgetary increases and transfers at year end. This is an action item.
So this is a routine item that we look at every year and ask for the board's approval, in that as we close out the year, we find that some of the expenditures need to be moved between categories, between supplies and salaries, and so that this resolution will authorize the county to go ahead and approve those budget revisions that we submit to them for the year-end closing.
Okay, any questions? We need a motion to approve the increases and transfers.
I move that we approve resolution 2014-0604A to authorize the county to make transfers.
Second.
All in favor?
Passes 5-0.
5-0. All right. Okay, so our next item is a public hearing on the budget, which is scheduled for 8:50. So we're moving on to item H, Prop 39 consultant contract. This is an action item.
And we do have, the consulting firm had let me know that they were planning to attend the meeting, and it was scheduled to be at 9 o'clock, so I don't know.
All right.
I don't know if you want to wait a few minutes, or if you want to proceed.
Okay, yeah, well, if we have somebody coming, let's go ahead, so.
So we should have thought about our recesses earlier.
Yes, all right, well, moving right along to I, Board Member Action Day, discussion item.
Board Member Action Day is an annual day sponsored by CSBA where they try to get board members to meet with their local elected representatives and discuss certain issues that are prominent, to make sure that those representatives hear the perspectives of school board members. And this year, there were a few items on their agenda. Obviously, the elephant in the room is LCFF and LCAPS. The main CSBA takeaway is that they wanted to make sure that legislators heard that we were very, very happy that they were giving us local control. We would like them to give us local control for an adequate amount of money. And just to make sure that they understood things which I think we hear a lot from up here, which is that the full funding of LCFF that's supposed to take place by 2020 or 2021 would still be far below today's average school funding across the nation. Of course, school funding by 2021 will be much higher in the rest of the nation as well. So they just wanted to make sure that that legislators heard that. Another issue that they had was the Prop 98 reserve. One of the governor's proposals was to add a rainy day fund to Prop 98. That one of the problems that we obviously have is that whenever there's a dip in governmental revenue, Prop 98 revenue drops and schools suddenly have to make cuts. So he wanted to implement a rainy day fund where a certain percentage of Prop 98 revenues would be set aside, and that those would then flow back into Prop 98 when things went south, when we were in a recession. And CSBA's concern with that was that Prop 98 funding is so low to begin with that reserving any of it sounds like an awesome idea, but that's funding that we actually need right now. And it does look like they're going to go ahead with the Prop 98 reserve. So that will not, so we will presumably be getting, I'm not sure, I believe it's included in the calculations that we've been using, that whatever funding we've been allocated is in fact a little bit lower than what we would have if this rainy day fund weren't in existence. But, I think given the huge potential advantage of having that later to even out the dips in funding that will happen, we know it's going to happen one day. Having that around might be something that we might not want to fight too hard. The next issue they had was transitional kindergarten, and they wanted to make sure that people understood that if there was a movement towards, at the time that we had this meeting, there was a question about whether TK was going to be extended to all 4-year-olds, because I think the understanding was that the governor would not discuss preschool, but he would discuss TK. So if school systems were going to be responsible for the 4-year-olds, he would discuss that, but if they wanted to have universal preschool, that was off the table. So that's why TK has been such a big thing, and we do understand that there's a huge benefit to having 4-year-olds in the school systems for articulation purposes. As we've seen, the advantage of having them flow directly into kindergarten is very good, but of course there's a funding issue there as well, because as usual, like, we would be asked to take an entire class of kids and would not necessarily have, there's the issue of facilities, there's the issue of credentialing, and of course there's the issue of making sure that we actually have enough teachers to teach all the 4-year-olds as well. So we wanted to make sure that they heard us, and I just saw the other day that actually the bill that passed was not TK for everybody. It was, essentially TK for needy kids. That's essentially where it would go. And also the STIRS, the issue of increased funding of STIRS is obviously a big deal for us. And our the thing about BMAD days, our representatives are fairly well dialed in to begin with. I think that this is probably a really super effective thing to do in places where school board members have less access to their representatives. But really, like we can call those folks anytime. I mean, Jerry and Kevin's offices are very responsive. So I don't know that we really needed a special thing. I will also say CSBA kind of muffed it on scheduling it. They did a terrible job. And until the very last, they wouldn't tell us when our appointments were with the representatives. And I kept sending them emails saying it would be really nice to know so that we could schedule our work days around it. And in the end, the night before the meetings, we got something that said, we're so sorry that that Jerry Hill's office can't do it, and that was actually I think we got that on a Wednesday, and that was the day that Leslie from Jerry Hill's office was actually here to give the certificates to some of our retiring teachers. So Andrea collared her, and when I spoke to someone in Jerry's office who said that CSBA actually had not really even bothered to contact them. So I was actually quite upset that they had implied that our representatives had blown them off when in fact they actually just hadn't bothered. So the executive director and president of CSBA got an angry gram from me about that. So I don't know if I would do it again. What?
Did you get a reply?
I did actually. Like they were both both Billy Vernon and Joe Lucy were extremely they replied very, very quickly and said they would look into it and get back to me. The second part hasn't happened, but we'll see. But I guess that the upshot is if this happens, when this comes back around next year, I'm not really super anxious to participate again, mostly because, I feel a little bit like we were jerked around a little by CSBA, and if they promise to get their act together, I really want to help represent their and our interests, but we kind of do that anyway.
So, and it might be, if we want to do this next year, we can still go with the CSBA issues. But maybe we make our own appointments, since CSBA doesn't seem to be able to do that, and I think that it would be pretty easy for us to make an appointment for that day, because we could probably do it in advance. Actually call her office
instead of waiting. Instead of waiting. Yeah, good idea.
It's just more a question of, were we advancing our issues, or are we advancing CSBA's issues? Are they always the same? We go there with other board members from San Mateo County, so I can't really, the main issue there, I think, is that there are a lot of, we're not calling them basic aid, community-funded districts. There are a lot of community-funded districts in San Mateo County, and some of them don't have our issues, but I think that all of those people are well aware of our issues, and they don't have any problem with us speaking our mind on it. That came up one or two times where, people from some of those districts said, that's not actually an issue, CSBA says this, that's not actually an issue for us. And I was like, well, actually it is kind of an issue for us. But they already know. Mark from Jerry's office was like, Josie is here all the time talking about that. So I think they've heard it, they know, and we're happy to tell them again and again and again until they actually take it to Sacramento.
I think when they started this, the concept was that school board members weren't in contact with their local state legislators as much, so the initial part was to get that connection going and communication, and I think the other part of it was so that the legislators were hearing that it wasn't just, CSBA, but that we as board members support some or all of what CSBA is touting. And like my experience was the same as yours when I did it, was there were certain things where we were like, well, we're not bringing that up as an issue because it's not really particularly an issue for us, or we don't agree with CSBA kind of things. And it was also an opportunity to bring up other issues. That would happen to be the famous time when we weren't getting any money from the state. So we went with the other partners in the room were affected like we were. So that was a more local issue too that we had time on. So it's kind of a combination. But I do think it's important that we are a partner in CSBA and support those issues going forward so that they really hear. And school boards are 5,000 elected officials across the state, essentially. That's a lot of voice, a lot of representation. Okay, all right. So I got to check off what we've done here. All right, we're going to go back to the LCAP because it is now past 8:30. So we will go back to item 11E, the local control accountability LCAP. It is 8:33. I will open the public hearing. Seeing no one here to speak, we'll close the public hearing. All right, if we can have discussion, and then is this an action item?
No, we don't have
No,
that
just
for action
just
next
that's right,
meeting.
okay. All right, so just discussion, okay. Tina?
So, we went over the LCAP at our last work study, but just a reminder of the format, since we used the state template, is that there is an introduction section, and then section 1 talks about our stakeholder engagement and a long list of different stakeholders that we involved along the way, obviously very well, that they feel like they don't need to be here tonight. And then section 2 is the section that has the goals that were developed by the district leadership team and what metrics we will be using to track our progress through this plan. Section 3 is the services, actions, and expenditures section. So this is where the allocations are noted. A big part of the LCAP is that it needs to be adopted in conjunction with the budget, so that we can show we're putting our money where our mouth is. And so that's that part in section A and B of section 3. Section C and D talk about the proportionality, so the amount of money that we're spending for our targeted subgroups, those students that are English learners, foster youth, and low income. If you have questions, comments, concerns, I know you've gotten a chance to look at it, and as I said, it will come back with the budget for adoption at the June 18th meeting.
Thank you again. I mean, I really think that it's true that we started on this process long before, like, I have, heard from other districts that, March, they were like, we should look into this LCAP thing. A lot of districts refused to look at the process until the template was available, which I think puts them in a very disadvantageous place. So, thanks for starting early and, good job.
Eric?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it's worth noting that the next document is 39 pages long, and that we spent hours as a group working on it. You spent hours and hours and hours working on it up to then. So I think the lack of discussion from the board here is only because we spent a lot of time discussing it. And I think Matt's right. Kudos. Good job.
And I just have to echo that as well. To Matt's point, I'm seeing districts scrambling, and the biggest thing is that their stakeholders don't feel they're heard because the documents come out, they've got like one meeting, and then it's going through the public hearing process and the whole thing. And so I think that, again, kudos to staff and for really doing what we were supposed to do, which was engage the community. And I think from the couple of meetings that I attended, we really got some good feedback from all of our groups. So I feel like it's a very strong plan, and that people will support us. So thank you very much. Okay, so let's see where we are here. So we can't do the public, we can't do the budget because it's not till 8:50. So, right. Yep. Okay, so we're going to move on to item J, which is the 2014 School District Governing Board election. This is a discussion action item.
So we received communication from Mark Church, Chief Elections Officer and Assistant County Clerk Recorder of San Mateo County. And it was regarding the November 4th, 2014 statewide general election. The candidate filing period will open July 14th and close August 8th. The terms of 3 trustees expire in December of 2014, and those are Richard Faust, Eric Rashain, and Joan Weideman. So in order to comply with the requirements, it is required that we determine or confirm the following candidate policies and submit a statement that is signed by the board secretary by July 3rd of 2014. So beneath what I did was I looked at our current board policies and included what our policy already says, which is members to be elected for a 4-year term, all 3. Limitations on the number of words in candidate statements is 200 word statement. Who shall be charged for the candidate statement sent to each voter, and the board at that time elected for the candidate to do so. And in the event of a tie vote in our board policy, they really only gave us what the 2 options were, and so now it's up for discussion as to which way that you would like to have either a runoff election or by lot.
Does anyone have an opinion?
I think since the cost of a runoff election would be borne by the district.
Mm-hmm.
That's a
Yes.
very significant cost.
Yes.
I think I would go for option. Should be on the unlikely event.
Well, hey.
An unlikely event of a tie.
Right,
I
yes.
think
Okay.
The runoff election would be a very expensive way to.
Okay.
I do want to keep, I will, every time this comes up, I will bring up the issue of the district potentially paying for the candidate statement. I do understand the skin in the game argument, but I also understand the people should be able to run for it, and not everybody has $400 to pay for the candidate statement. So that's, I'm throwing it out there, like eventually it'll come back and I'll mention it again.
Well, I think that maybe shocking as this may seem, I didn't realize we had a policy on this. But maybe we could address that in the policy and have a further discussion. I know it came up before.
Well,
but maybe we
when
could have a
policy came up, I mentioned it then, but and to be fair, like I feel like the feeling was that people felt it should stay that way, that the candidate pays for it. But I just wanted to,
Well,
so I figured this, since it came back up, I would bring it up again.
Yeah. Well, I think we could look at a process in the event that somebody would like to apply. For a waiver. Is that an option, or is it an option? Because you can get signatures. You have to get I think for our district it's 1,200 or 1,500 signatures to waive the fee. That's a pretty high. It's a lot of signatures. If they said, well, if you get 200 signatures, you can waive the fee, I would be like, all right, well then it's not that big a deal. If you're a real candidate, you can do that. But I feel like the signature requirement is a little bit high. I don't know if I did 1,200 signatures.
Half the voters in some elections. Anyway,
Okay.
I don't. So
Okay. All
I
right.
wouldn't go on except that we can't do anything till 8:50. I'm bloviating because we're wasting time.
Okay. All right. So I heard by lot. I think at this time I would like to share with the board what my intentions are for next year, and the community as well. I have thought really long and hard about this, and I am not running for re-election this coming fall. I just feel like I'm not giving you guys a fair share of my time, and my family wants to see me every once in a while. Of course, he's
They
not
just
gonna-
thought of this after 12 years?
He's very patient. So I will not be running for re-election.
Well, we understand, but we're incredibly grateful for the how many years?
Only 12.
Only 12. Only 12.
Thank you.
Likewise, I will chime in, and I have truly enjoyed working with the board, and I feel like I still have more to offer and more that I would like to accomplish, so I will be running again.
You want to make a statement? It looks
Yeah,
like
Eric.
it looks like it's the time for people.
Thank you, okay.
Mike waited until the last minute also.
Wait 7 minutes until we have an.
There are other items on the agenda.
Are there? Okay. Well, we're glad that we get to keep you at home.
We have folks arriving.
Yes, okay, so, saved by the bell.
Do we
All
need
right,
a-
we made a motion to approve that there will be 4-year terms, 200-word statements. The candidate will pay for the statement, and that should there be a tie, the runoff will be by lot, or the candidate will be selected by lot.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Okay, all right. So, to be respectful of the members who are here to speak to item 11H, we'll go to the Prop 39 consultant contract. This is an action item.
So, Prop 39, which is the State of California Energy Efficiency, passed last year, and the actual documentation and guidelines were issued in December. So Pacifica School District, we've been working with the San Mateo County Office of Ed. We kind of listed the things we've accomplished so far. Initially, we thought that San Mateo County Office of Ed would hire an energy manager, and then the district could share in an energy manager. But when the regulations came out in December, it was one of the things that you couldn't do. You really needed to go out and do a request for qualifications, request for proposal, and go through the process of hiring a consultant. And so we did that, and we did have a committee, Gwendolyn Holden, who represents the green team, and then Matt and myself. We reviewed the proposals, and we're coming forward with you tonight to, to recommend that we hire ARC Alternatives as our energy consultant and work on a contract with them. And I just kind of summarize where we are today as far as the process. We've also partnered with Energy Watch. We're doing a lot of audits right now with PG&E, the gas, electric, and water. The water district is assisting us with that. Our staff have completed the PG&E portfolio management training, so they'll be able to monitor our bills and run reports and all that. And we submitted our application to Bright Schools for $20,000 worth of audits, and we do have a contact person for that who's ready to go. So we've also met with some solar people. We've done a lot of behind-the-scenes work, but we really feel we need a consultant to help us pull all this together and start developing an expenditure plan for our district so that we can move forward with some projects. Listed on the second page are the companies that submitted proposals, and then, as I said, we are recommending ARC alternatives for this project. And they are here tonight. The proposal was attached to the agenda item, and so if the board members have any questions or comments, they are here to answer those questions.
I read the entire thing, which was stunning. Thanks.
Wow.
I mean, you guys use more acronyms. I was truly impressed. The appendix did not include translation, which was a little disappointing. Well, I guess the bottom line is if I understood all of that, we wouldn't need to hire you.
Exactly.
So, no, I think the staff did a great job, and I certainly, if this is the staff recommendation, I don't have any issues of moving forward.
The solar panels that go into the parking lot, I find that they're not particularly attractive when I see them around. Is there any thoughts, that those could be a little bit better looking? I don't know, maybe I'm just not Frank Lloyd Wright-ish or not or something, but to me they're not pretty.
And you who drive the Leaf.
Well, yeah, but my Leaf is attractive.
No, but the...
Well, okay.
Ross drives a Leaf as well. And he actually, he's...
Are we gonna put in some chargers around the district?
We could look into that.
Yeah.
I appreciate that.
I would appreciate that too.
If I could respond, I've done a lot of school work.
The microphone's for the TV. It's not for us, but for TV, but we do have people that like to watch school board meetings. So they'd love to hear what you have to say. No, it's just for the TV.
It's just recording.
Oh, I'm not gonna,
No.
you can hear me from here?
But
Sorry, this whole situation's.
Get used to it.
So Russell Driver with ARC Alternatives, and in my background, I've done a lot of solar work, and we've had this very issue come up a number of times in terms of the aesthetics of these potential structures if you end up doing them in the parking lots. And there are a number of things that you can do, and we have done, and I'll give you a couple of examples. The easiest and simplest is to look at paint and fascia and sort of trim and edge pieces so that it's at least consistent with the architecture of your facilities, which helps a little bit. I mean, it doesn't turn it into something it's not. The other thing that we've seen done pretty successfully is installing benches and planters and outdoor, depending where you are. If you're not in the parking lot, you can do outdoor classroom space and use it as shade for the students. I have a number of drawings that have some interesting concepts. Someone was doing some work with the fascia again, where they had the school's name sort of punched out of the steel, and so the shadows would cast the school's name in the concrete. But more or less, it's still a 12-foot tall steel thing. And if you get away from that approach, what you end up doing is getting away from structures that are already pre-approved by Division of State Architect, and the costs and timelines go way, way up. And so that's sort of why they all look the same, is because they pass DSA inspection. But there are things you can do around the edges to soften it and help it out. But that's sort of where we are.
I tried.
Sure. But we can look at those. I mean, if solar is something we pursue, sorry. If solar is something that the district pursues, we can certainly work on those issues, and depending on budgets or things, we can be more or less aggressive on the aesthetic issue.
What I do want to comment about in relationship to Prop 39 is that we would first really look at energy efficiency, and so that's where our alternatives will help us in determining what are some ways that we can be more efficient with our energy. And so solar is like that next step if we're looking to, if we have funding left. Because I think it's a 5-year process, and we're looking to maybe $100,000 a year from now on. So it's not a whole lot of money. It's nice to have. But I think that there are some things that we may be able to do with what we already have in order to capture and be more efficient with our energy. I just wanted to point that out.
And if I may, I think that was actually one of the things that was attractive about ARC's proposal, is that there were some proposals that we received where it really did seem that the only things that these companies had done was solar projects. And since we were not really, we did not really think that the Prop 39 money in and of itself was going to be enough to fund any kind of major solar projects. We really did want somebody who had experience and even the understanding that this district was not big enough to do that. So I thought that was, recognizing that in the first place, I think was a plus.
Okay, let's see. This is, I've lost track here. This is an action item, so we need a motion to accept the proposal of ARC Alternatives.
So moved.
All in favor?
Passes by vote.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you. All right, let's see.
It's 8:50.
It's 8:50. We can go for a public hearing on the budget. All right, so this is a public hearing for the 14-15 budget. It is 8:52. I am opening the public hearing. No one here to comment. We'll close the public hearing. Just presentation and discussion, please.
We did review in more detail the budget assumptions and the building of the budget on our May 28th study session. And so tonight we have the thick budget packet attached, but I also just kind of prepared a very short PowerPoint as a summary of where we are with the budget and some of the discussions that we had last week. So again, we're always looking at a balanced investment in people, operations, and programs for the benefit of our students. We allocate the revenue to address needs in these areas as we keep in mind negotiations with our labor partners. We reviewed this in detail, so I'll kind of just go through a summary. The new local control funding formula was implemented this year, so next year is the second year of our local control funding formula. It does address inequities across districts and across the state in funding, but it is an 8-year transition plan, so it is going to be till 2020, and I think Matt touched on some of those things. It does increase flexibility, and that's why we went through the whole LCAP process, because it is local control, and the budget is based on our LCAP, based on the process that we went through in developing our LCAP. The funding is based on grade level, and then, as Tina mentioned, there's supplemental funds for students of need, English learners, foster youth, and the free and reduced. The assumptions that went in were based on the governor's May revision. You guys know that it's going through the Senate and the Assembly, and there's been some recommendations for change. When the governor signs his final budget, we would be able to revise our assumptions, revise our budget, and then bring it back to you in the fall. So it's based on what we call gap funding, 11.78%. So again, there's a calculation of where is our target and where are we today, and the governor's going to fund 11.78% of the difference in where we are today and what the target is. Our ADA is just over 3,000 students. And then proportionality, and Tina touched on this, and we talked a lot about this in the LCAP. 3.02% is the proportion that we spend of our LCFF funding on students of need. And that percentage changes every year based on how many students there are and how much the local control funding formula is. In the governor's proposal, there's no additional funding for Common Core. However, some of the other budget subcommittees are proposing some one-time funding for Common Core. The Prop 39 funding is approximately $100,000 for the next 4 years. We received $130,000 this year, but they say it's about 20% of the first year's funding. Parcel Tax has a slight increase of $1.3 million, and in the budget we are continuing to keep $325,000 of lease income in the general fund as we transfer the additional funds from Oddstad and the cell towers to Fund 40, and we talked a lot about that.
You said, I just want to clarify, if I just misheard you, it's not an increase of 1.3, it's an increase to
1.3. And I'll show you on a later slide the difference between this year and next year.
Yeah.
And that number was from the consulting firm who handles our parcel tax. They actually have the actual parcels, and they calculate the amounts. This is a review. We went through this in detail last week, but this is a breakdown of our revenues, of how they break down, and you can see the biggest portion is the local controlled LCFF funds. We talked about how we're getting a little bit of property taxes next year, and starting this year, that's $300,000. Prop 30 is 11% of the revenues. And then you have state, federal, special education. Parcel tax is 5%, and then the local funding, other local grants is another 5%. Then
Before you leave that, I just want to clarify that even though we did LCFS separate and then Prop 30 and the property tax, that really, the blue, that orange, and then the gray, really is all under LCFF funding. So, but we wanted to show you what we generated out of the formula. So because Prop 30 does sunset in 5 years.
No, it starts to sunset in 2016.
2016. So that's something that we need to consider as well.
And then under that local, that includes PTOs, PEP?
Yes, that would be interest income, PTOs, PEP, the sites when they have little mini grant accounts, the kindergarten camps, all of that.
All our grants that we get. Lease money? No.
Yes, lease money is in
the
local.
5%?
Yeah. Yes, but I would say that the 5% is understated because you really don't see everything the PTOs do. They do much more than what goes through our books. And also, in a projected budget, you can't tell how much will be deposited by the PTOs and some of the PTOs and the grants until they actually come in. So we budget as we receive it. So that 5% is really low, I think. It could be a little higher, once we get into the school year and we start seeing the funds come in. And I think that's a very good point that Wendy made, because no matter how much the bottom part of the pie is comprised, that's the total state funding. There's no increase because we got some property taxes, it's part of the formula.
Yeah, well, if the orange slice goes up, the blue slice goes down.
Exactly.
Okay.
And then the expenses, assumptions that went into building next year's budget. This year, and we're projecting that next year, our step and column is actually higher than, usually if you have 4 to 5 retirements for teachers, they're paid at the top of the salary schedule, and then you hire a younger teacher or a newer teacher, that there's there's a savings. Well, we only had 2 retirements, and so as people move up on the salary schedule, there's a cost to that, and it's about $180,000, and having only 2 retirements, we were not able to offset that cost. And so there's an increase in expenditures for step and column. And then we've talked a lot about the health benefit cost increase. It's about $300,000, and what that correlates to is a 1.9% total compensation increase. And in the past, it's been 1.5%, but starting this school year, it became 1.9%. And so we're budgeting 1.9%. In January, once open enrollment is complete, we'll have the exact figure. It could be 2%, or it could be back to 1.5%. The minimum proportionality, so that's the part of your LCFF funding that you use to support English learners, foster youth, and free and reduced, is $596,000. And then retirement contribution increases. This is what we have in our budget based on the governor's proposal. There's these increases in STRS and PERS. However, both budget committees are recommending lower rates. So we'll have to adjust that once the final budget is adopted. And then expenditures, this is a visual so you can see how much, kind of the pie of where the expenditures break out. And the blue and the kind of burgundy red and gray and kind of orange, the whole bottom part of the pie, or I'd say 3/4 or more, is salaries and benefits for all of those are employee costs.
And the benefits are for all employee benefits?
For all employees, and it's not just health insurance and dental, it includes workers' comp, unemployment, all of the fixed payroll costs.
A quarter of the expense. It's huge.
Well, it's about 83% for employees, which is about par for a service organization.
It is, but I think our district has a higher percentage in benefits than salaries.
Well, within that.
Within that, yes.
But the overall 83% is, my understanding, pretty much SOP.
Yes.
About 83 to 85%.
Right.
Payroll.
And then part of the budget adoption, we have to project 2 years going out, and right now it's difficult to project because some of these numbers have changed even since last week when we met. The gap funding percentages is the Department of Finance, and then we have school services, who we rely on a lot. So the Department of Finance was projecting 33% gap funding in 15-16, while school services was giving a more conservative approach of 7.8%. Those percentages have all changed now from what I'm reading in the subcommittees, and so by the time the budget is adopted, we'll have better figures. But it really is hard to project 2 years out. We just do our best. And the good thing is in our projections, we maintain a positive certification, positive fund balances and positive certifications, given the current assumptions, and these are conservative assumptions. We project enrollment is steady, even though we have a large 8th grade class graduating next year. We looked at the following year, and we can see that the enrollment goes back up, and based on the formula, you get to count your current attendance or your prior year attendance. So we don't see that much risk in the funding based on enrollment. Then the lease income, we continue to transfer about $100,000 per year of lease income to Fund 40 to fund the technology and furniture and district vehicles and equipment. We're also transferring some of the local control funding to Fund 14, deferred maintenance, and we have a slide on deferred maintenance. And you'll see how important it is to transfer those funds just to maintain our facilities. And then the reserves, another important thing is, as we proceed, we didn't have the STRS in our second interim, the increase in retirement. And so without adequate reserves, these types of things can come up that you're not anticipating, and you won't have enough in your budget. So we are adding $125,000 more to the reserve each year, as we've discussed previously with the board.
So just a note on that. So the projected STRS was to go up 140, and CalPERS was,
I think it was 12,000.
Okay, so that the increase is more than we're putting into the reserves.
Correct.
So we didn't even hit that mark this year, even though we increased.
Correct.
All right. Just to be clear that we just sucked out our reserves that we set aside and more. Okay.
Oh, I didn't talk about the minimum proportionality. So, as we move forward in the years, you keep looking at that percentage of how many students of English learners, free and reduced, and foster students, and you update the minimum proportionality increases, because for those students you're generating funds, but you again have a target, and we're still at the floor. So as they calculate it through the years, you have to keep increasing the minimum proportionality until you reach the target for those students as well. So every year, a part of your increase for LCFF is going to be used to serve students of need, those student populations. And that's $63,000 for 2015-16. And we didn't calculate it for 16-17 at this time. So just things to consider. We talked about Prop 30. And as Wendy mentioned, it starts to sunset. I do have some preliminary figures, even though we do know that Governor Brown is trying to put some measures in place to help us as it sunsets. In 2016, when the sales tax begins sunsetting, it correlates to $47 per student, which is $150,000 for our school district, loss of Prop 30 funds. Now, his plan is to be able to backfill the Prop 30 funds as it sunsets. The following year, it's a $95 per student loss, and that's $300,000 for our school district. And then it goes up to $930,000 and then $1.5 million. So hopefully, his measures that he's trying to put in place to offset the loss of Prop 30 funds, he'll be able to build that into his budget, because you can see how unstable the funding could be with the loss of Prop 30 if we don't have some kind of backfill for those funds. We have to continue looking at the health benefits. We had our health benefit committee presentation, enrollment trends, STRS and PERS, and then other funds. I touched on the child nutrition fund, and then I'll talk about the deferred maintenance fund because we have a slide on that. This is a summary, and you have the whole packet of our budget attached to this presentation, but this is just a very summarized version of our budget. And you can see in 13-14, we're operating at a deficit, and that's because, as we talked about, we started the year with a $2.3 million beginning fund balance. And as we met with the labor partners, we agreed to a 3.5% salary increase in addition to the 1.9% benefit increase. So we were spending one-time funds that we had in our beginning fund balance, and that's why you see a deficit in 13-14. And then we also have a deficit in 14-15, which we didn't project at second interim, and that's because of the STRS increases and some of the other increases in the budget that were on our assumptions. So you can see how volatile things are. At second interim, we thought we had a balanced budget, and then certain things happen, and then now we're looking at a deficit again for next school year. And then the following year in 15-16, that's without any labor negotiations or any additions added to the budget.
Well, that's without Obamacare, and it's without healthcare costs or cost containments or.
Matt?
Quick, so the 3% reserve for economic uncertainty, so in the budget documents, the $125,000 that we've been taking away has been going into 3% reserve for economic, has been going to, so it's not really the 3% reserve anymore, because it's the reserve of 3% plus what we decided to put away.
I need to update that percentage so that it's 3, 3.2, 3.5, and it is in the general fund. You're right.
Well, there you
No, let's go back.
No, you're hitting it now. That's fine.
Okay. So some additional things we talked about last week, and then we want to have a little, just kind of confirm some of the assumptions we made last week were parcel tax projections. We'll review the deferred maintenance, child nutrition. We've talked about, we need to look at maintaining a solvent program going forward, and there might be some need for a contribution from the general fund, and then reserves. So here's the parcel tax, and this will answer Eric's question. This year, we received 1.2 million, almost 1.3, but the projection next year is 1,309,000. So that's the slight increase. For the current year, you can see we end with a balance of 265,000, and this is where the discussion revolved around during our study session last week was. With the ending fund balance, it's one-time money, and we want to spend it on one-time things. And during the study session, we also had the in-depth presentation on our technology budget and all of the needs for technology. And so the thought was to use the one-time parcel tax funds to fund one-time technology needs to boost up our infrastructure and our wireless network. And so we went ahead, and it's in red, we added the $250,000 technology purchase to next year, using up those one-time funds.
Thank God we didn't spend it all the first time.
Exactly, we've been very careful.
Do you want to wait, or?
No, go ahead.
On the slide prior, and you talked about going out 2 years, I guess I would like to see us start including, we talked about Prop 30 sunshining. I think it's also important for the community to understand that the parcel tax has an ending date, and that the impact of that going away, should it not be, the community not decide to renew it, that's an important piece of being out for a couple of years.
Right, and so that would be something that we need to start including in 2016-17 in the multi-year, and you're right, that is going to start sunsetting, and so we talked a lot about that last week, about the timelines, and we're going to get to work on that so we can...
Right, but I just think it's important that the community understands that 2 big pieces of revenue could go away in the next several years, and that's important.
So I think what would be good is if I had a slide on multi-year considerations, and then I added Prop 30 and kind of show the dollar amounts each year and go beyond 2 years.
Right.
And then do parcel tax. And I can do that. I can add that for June 18th when we adopt the budget.
And then the second piece is, I'm not sure people in the community understand the STRS piece and the PERS piece, and that how long, that this has been another effort of the state legislature to shift the problem from them to us, and that they've shifted that unfunded liability without any additional revenue to us, and this is coming out of the Prop 98 funding. So I think it's important to understand that that just showed up.
You think I should include that as well on that same slide?
I just think it's important that people understand that, it's one thing, this is the concept, and I'd be curious if at the legislative day, if there's any sense of, I'm sure there's no guilt, but if there's any sense of any assistance on that, or just pushing there. I guess it's all of our problem, but to do it in the end of May for June is like pretty irresponsible budgeting, in my opinion.
And I think that's kind of where the discussion's going, so maybe decrease the percentage, but the overall percentage will not change. They're just pushing the can down the road.
Right.
So there's also conversation, however, around the fact that the state did not provide their portion of the STRS as well. And so how do we compensate on both sides? Because we realize that it needs to, it's an important piece of our budget. But, so there's discussion happening on all of those levels. So we'll have to wait and see. But it's really something that we just really need to monitor, because it could it's going to impact us down the road no matter what. And so it's when and how much at that time.
Well, safe bet is that for future budgets, that you're gonna have to build in at least that much.
Oh, absolutely.
You know, that's now gonna be, that increase is gonna be part of.
Well, it's more than that, is not only do we have to build in the 140, but that amount goes up, because over
Percentage
time,
goes up.
our percentage goes up from, I forget what, but the 140K will be now and forever, and that's only like a small portion of the additional amount that we will, over the course of the next 7 or 8 years, have to build in. But as bad as bad as that is, and no, there won't be any guilt from the legislature side, but as bad as that is, I mean, I do think that actually, as much as the Prop 98 rainy day fund and the pension readjustments hurt, I do think it's important for us to, understand that these are exactly the kind of budget gimmicks that we told the legislature and the governors that we hated them doing. That we don't like them deferring funds year to year, and they have done something to fix that, and that the looming pension liabilities terrify us, and they're working on that, and that the swings in revenue make it impossible for us to budget, and they're working on that. So as difficult and straitjackety as it seems, I think everybody does need to keep in mind that those are extremely fiscally prudent things to do. Things which one day, I think, like other states will be very sorry they didn't do. So I hope, and I really hope this turns out to be true. But I do agree that, like, on whatever that slide is, it should say 140 this year, and and what the eventual target is could be on there. So it could say like 140 this year. Eventually, we will have to find another 1.3 million a year when that's fully funded or whatever, because that's, 140K is almost a 1% raise, really.
It
so,
is.
like,
Well,
that's
160 is a 1% raise.
So, that's, I think that's something that, but it's going to their retirement, so it's not, it's not money ill spent, but still.
What also might be helpful too is, that benefit pie is 28%. It would be nice to know what the breakdown is. As in terms of if the benefits are X amount of dollars, then how much of it is health benefits cost? How much of it is the STRS or whatever I don't know if we want to do STRS and our retirement contribution, and then the unemployment,
It's all in here.
Right, I know, but I think,
put it in a visual.
But yeah, it's
right, but I think what, when people say benefits, they don't, when I hear benefits, I think health and wealth, I think like health benefits. And so when I saw this, I'm like, 28% for health benefits, wow, that's, and then I have to readjust that's the retirement, that's the unemployment, that's workers' comp. I think it would, and I think seeing it projected out like that.
Okay, so I can do that, make another visual for the benefits pie, portion of the pie.
But we have a real clear understanding. I think, but attached dollar amounts, not just percentages.
Okay.
Like a chart like this. Because when you see 28%, that's big, but when you see quarter of our budget is a lot of money.
It's page 161 if you want to. If you want to take a look at it now.
He's
it's
got
page
a big six-pack. But I'll do that, and then for the other chart that, the other slide I was talking to Matt about, I think it might be interesting to put the employee portion on there, so that the employee can see my contributions are going up by this percentage every year. Not a dollar amount, but just so they know that it's going to come out of their paychecks in future years as well.
Yeah, and I think that's important for them to know.
So I can add that.
And it's also going to be an important part of, I'm fairly confident that will come up in terms of bargaining with our units as well, because they're going to be taking essentially a cut to make that. So there's going to be an interest, I'm sure, for us to fund, even though we can't pay it. I'm sure there'll be a way to. We'll hear about it again.
Yes. Well, we're going to have a hard time paying our share.
No, I agree, but that
doesn't mean
not
they
the
won't
issue.
ask, yes.
Okay, that's good information. So then this is just a summary of our other funds. The Child Nutrition Fund has a balance of $122,000, but that really is to meet the payroll and the monthly costs. So if that fund starts losing money, it's going to be something that we're going to have to talk about taking out of the LCFF funding. Deferred maintenance, we're projecting with all the expenditures we had this year, and I have a breakdown of that we're going to end the year with $50,000 in that fund. And that's why on the earlier slide, we're transferring $240,000 next year. And then the Special Reserve Fund 17 is the board's, the fund that can only be touched with board action, and that's the additional reserve is $700,000. The building fund is $750,000, and the last time we used that fund was for our play structures. And, if we hold on to these dollars, we can, in 5 to 7 years, go back around and start replacing the play structures. And capital developer fee fund, we're going to start talking more in cabinet about what we can do with that. But now there's a little bit more construction in Pacifica, and that's how we earn funds in developer fees, is when there's a construction project, we get a small percentage of the fees that they pay to the high school district. And those funds can only be used for areas of growth. So if you see growth in the north side of town, you could maybe put a portable building at Sunset Ridge, those types of things. And then retiree benefit fund is how we pay for our retirement costs, and we carry a balance of almost a year's worth of cost, and that's a pay-as-you-go. You've seen the actuary report, and they say you should have $10 million. We really just have a $1 million, a 1 year amount in that fund.
Do we have, sorry, Josie, on the building fund 21, we have no income going in there. So is that correct?
Correct. Interest income in the Lehman Brothers that we got, 20 cents on the dollar went in this year, but then we don't anticipate any additions going forward.
Okay, so once that money is depleted, future years out, something to consider in terms of like our deferred maintenance, to making sure that we put a little money aside every year for things we need to do.
Because the play structures will come again, and so if we have a commitment, you need to start putting dollars in, so when it cycles back, we'll have the money to upgrade the play structures again.
To Bennett, go off of that. Earlier you talked about using the one-time money from the parcel tax to pay for the technology upgrade, and I don't have any problem doing that. But I also think that it really isn't one-time money. It isn't a one-time need, because I think that the technology is like the play structures. It has a life cycle, and we really should be, I know we can't do it now, but we should be moving towards a technology fund. And, these things are good for 3 or 4 years, and then you have to replace them.
We have that. That's what the capital outlay fund is.
But we don't have, do we have a recognition that, we spent money on a network a few years ago, and now we're spending money, and chances are 5 years from now, there's going to be another need. It's anticipated needs.
And that's why we're trying to transfer the lease income out of general fund, so that we have the technology plan, we know what we need over the next 3 years. If we keep transferring the lease income, then we can reach a point where we'll be able to fully fund the technology plan.
And keep the cycle moving.
Right, because that's critical to understand that it's really not a one-time expense.
Right.
It's really an ongoing.
And I don't have that on here.
I was going to say, what fund is that?
That's Fund 40, and I don't have that, for some reason I don't have that one on here because we talked so much about it with technology, so I need to add that. But I'm sure Matt has it on his screen.
I'm sure I can find it.
Yeah, I think that's something, if that lease income is going in there, and then we're going to be spending money out of that for technology, that should be a fund that we track.
So I'll add that for the June 18th board meeting. Then this is what we talked about last week, and just a review of how we spent the deferred maintenance funds this year. We spent more than normal this year. It's a total of $221,000, and that was mainly due to some safety issues that needed to be addressed around the district. So you can see the drop next year. The normal spending was $120,000. Hopefully we can, maintain that level. But in addition to that, we didn't paint a building, or we didn't do a bid to paint a building this summer, which we originally planned to do. So we're another year behind on our painting schedule. So when you look at the ending fund balance, hopefully we can use those funds for painting, and then our Ortega flooding issue. That's not enough, the $164,000. So we'll be depositing the $240,000 on July 1st, and that will help us cover the painting and the Ortega flooding issue.
So we'll paint in, not this summer, but the following summer.
Yes, unfortunately, we're another year behind.
Well, but we're getting there.
But one thing we can look at is there are some areas at IBL, and we did this at Sunset Ridge with the pillars. Maybe we don't do a full bid, but the windows at IBL need some painting, so maybe we do a smaller bid to do some of those really high-need areas, because IBL was just painted, so we need to go to Ortega, Cabrillo, Ocean Shore, you know, and then go back. So maybe we do smaller areas, the high-need areas for IBL and Sunset Ridge. So that might be an option, because we can do that in a shorter amount of time. It has to be during the good weather months.
Yes, I know that's the hard part too.
So, then reserves, school services updated their chart on reserves for 12-13 because they have the unaudited actuals. And elementary districts were 23%. In 12-13, we were at 10.75%. And that is really because of all the extreme budget cuts and mid-year budget cuts that we were facing. We were not sure if Prop 30 was going to pass, and so a lot of districts were anticipating budget cuts and had higher reserves. You know, given all the different things that have been happening with the ups and down swings of funding, it was more important to build those reserves. You can see ours dropped from 12-13 to 13-14, and then again 14-15, and that's because of the salary increases.
So if we're at half of the average, we pull the average down, what is the high end of what districts have in reserve? So if 23% is average, that means people have what, 40-50% in reserve?
You're right. And you have to understand what's included in those reserves is your reserve for economic uncertainty, but then if you have anything in your ending fund balance which is unallocated, which we had 1.2 million, which we talked about at the end of 12-13, 13-14, they count that and they count Fund 17. So some districts had unallocated fund balances, and some of them had large EIA, the Old English Language Learner Program, ending fund balances, and they count those things in the reserves. So that's, you're right, I mean, what would it be? It would be 30-40% for the top.
The high school
right?
district had 11 million in their unallocated fund, in their ending fund balance as of the beginning of this year, so.
Does it include, I thought you were done. Does it include like bond money, or is that totally separate?
No, that's completely, the only thing it includes is general fund and Fund 17. So it's not really restricted accounts. So I think for the other districts, you'll see drops as well, 13, 14, 14, 15. So we talked about the next steps. We really just need to wait until the governor approves the final budget before we can start making revisions to ours. So what will be presented on June 18th will be what's in the packet tonight. There won't be any changes between now and then that we could make in a timely manner and post by next Friday. So, and then we'll revise the budget during first interim report. So we'll make those we'll add some additional slides, and if the board has any other questions or direction for the next board meeting, we can address that.
Matt?
I have two questions. The first is with regard to proportionality. Andrea mentioned the idea in the future of, sorry, sneeze coming on, mentioned the idea of us potentially funding outdoor ed for everybody. Like, would that potentially count for proportionality?
Yeah, that's something that we talked about at the study session, if we did it for free and reduced students, or...
Well, and what my understanding was, right now, we set aside dollars under supplemental funds for foster youth. But if we want to do it for all students, then it's really not targeting students, because it's a program we're kind of providing across the board. So you would have to just think about, I'm not saying yes or no, I think you have to think about what the intent is behind the use of those funds. And is it going to allow for us to target those students and they gain, we supplement their program? I mean, that's just the question we have to keep thinking about.
Okay. And then the second question was regarding Fund 17. I wanted to open up the possibility of, right now, the money that we're setting aside for reserve is just going into reserve for economic uncertainty, which means it's just sort of a component of the of the ending fund balance, really. Like, we could, it could get spent at any time. So I wanted to open up the possibility of us moving some or all of that into Fund 17 at one point, which can only be spent with board action. And the reason for that is explicitly to increase our reserves and move it sort of out of the general fund so that it can't be spent. Not that and I don't mean that I don't want anyone to think that I want to do that because I think that it would be spent, but I just think that if we're going to call it reserves and we're going to make a point of moving it away so that it can't be spent, like, the further we move it, the better, in a sense. And Fund 17, as you said, is still counted in the reserve calculation. So it would, it would still be part of the reserve calculation, but it would just go out of the, out of the general fund.
I kind of agree with that. And one of the things I think that it strikes me is that it will force the board to be very conscious about the use of reserves and understanding those kinds of balances, or even, and I'd like to hear what staff thinks about all that too, or maybe it's a 50-50 split, because I think we also need to leave some flexibility for,
That's actually exactly what I was going to say. If we could, when we come back and we could make a recommendation in the first interim report to transfer, maybe do 50-50, because even though the state has eliminated the deferrals, we still have, some cash flow issues from month to month, and so by leaving some of it in the general fund, it gives us the flexibility to address any cash flow issues. And if you put it all in Fund 17, we have to wait for board action to transfer it back. And so that the staff would lose the flexibility to maintain a positive cash balance each month. So I think a 50-50 would be something that I think would be good.
And my only caution would be, if we're going to do that we be very transparent on what's being done and why it's being done, so that there's no appearance of hiding money.
Yeah, that's why I brought it up. I wanted to make a big point of sort of bringing it up here. We should probably make sure we bring it up again when our labor partners are here. I'm happy to bring up that idea again, earlier in a board meeting. But yeah, I do happy to do that.
Eric?
Is this a generally accepted accounting practice to do this?
Yes, and for transparency, Fund 17 is always reflected in the bargaining and always reflected in, the reports, the district reserves. It's a common discussion, so it's not like people don't know about it.
And I'm not even tied to the 50-50. I mean, I think that it's I don't know how many people would catch the fact that we had, at the interim, we had the $63,000 positive balance, and then we went to, I don't even remember what the number is now, 346 deficit.
Right.
And there's so much going on and shifting that I don't think sometimes stuff just happens.
And then we can also bring the board policy back on reserves once we've, kind of talked about it and decided what that percentage should be.
Did we ever get the policy from that other district that they were gonna, was it Menlo Park? That had the policy about how they were gonna spend their reserves?
No, they were still working on it at that point.
Okay.
I'm assuming by now it's approved.
Okay.
If you're spending your reserves, they're not your reserves.
Well, no, see, the issue in that district was they were putting money aside for reserves, but they had board members who wouldn't spend the reserves when there was an emergency. So they had money, and they were wanting to make cuts when they had money to kind of flex.
Policy on what they would spend.
Or how they would make the decision about spending reserves or something. might be just interesting to see what they came up with. Are we done budgets? Okay.
Thank you, Josie.
Yes, excellent job.
Fabulous as always.
Okay, so we're on to item 11K, Memorandum of Understanding with Youth Service Bureaus, Contractor Service. This is an action item.
Okay, so we have a middle school counselor that has requested to take a reduction of 20% for next year, 14-15, and this is at IBL school. And so we are recommending that the board approve an MOU with Youth Services Bureau, who we currently collaborate with on an annual basis with the trainees that they place at our sites. This MOU would allow for services for counseling consultant time at IBL to facilitate social skills groups. And that would fill the void of the 20% when the regular counselor is not there.
Why is the person being there all week long, or just on that one day that the regular counselor is not there?
Good question. Just on the one day that the regular counselor is not there. So that would be every Monday that school is in session. And then the regular counselor would be there Tuesday through Friday.
Any other questions or comments? All right, we need a motion to approve the Memorandum of Understanding with the Youth Service Bureau.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Passes by vote. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so now we're on to 11L, Bay Area Commuter Benefits Program.
Hey.
That's good.
So this is Senate Bill 1339, Bay Area Commuters Benefit Program. And it was signed into law back in 2012. But recently, written regulations were finalized as of March 19th of this year, 2014, and they go into effect September 30th, 2014. What the requirement is that all employers that have an average of 50 or more full-time employees per week implement this Senate Bill 1339 Bay Area Commuter Benefits Program. And the employees must offer covered employees a commuter benefit, quote unquote, commuter benefit. We do qualify as a district that has 50 or more full-time employees. And we are recommending, there are several options to go from, as you can see here. And we are recommending that we go with the pre-tax option. This option is the most widely used for districts our size and employees that are in our district. So there are requirements, and these requirements are set by the Bay Area Quality Management District. I'm not even going to attempt the acronym, stating the acronym, BAAQMD. And in following the requirements, we have to first determine that our organization is covered by the law, which we are. We have to choose a commuter benefit option. We are recommending option 1 based on the size and need of our staff. We have to have a commuter benefits coordinator. That would be me. Associate superintendent. And we need to register with BAAQMD, Bay Area Quality Management District. And this would be the responsibility of the coordinator. We have to notify employees. This would be the responsibility of the coordinator. And then throughout the year, we have to maintain and retain records. Any questions?
Okay, another box.
I'm fine with option 1 if you're looking for discussion.
Yeah. This is not an action
I know,
item, it's just
but I
direction, right? Yeah, I am too.
I'm just curious, does anyone actually use this?
Well, San Mateo County Office of Education, they have already started their program up. Now, they're actually choosing employer-provided subsidy. They're giving their employees up to $75 a month for commuting together And I don't know when their program actually went into effect. I think it just recently did. I have a flyer on it here. They're calling it the Alternative Transportation Incentive Program. Doesn't have a start date though, but their flyer went out to their employees last month, and I'm assuming it's starting up soon. We have to have ours in place by September 30th.
Do you know, I guess my question was, do you actually know of anyone who takes transit to work?
Oh, in our district?
Yeah.
No, and that's why we're choosing option one.
Yeah. The majority of our employees are also members of our community.
Right. And so, yeah.
Yeah, there's one person.
Yeah. Do we go out and shop for some kind of a plan, like these extra health insurance plan? I mean, like how do we implement such this option one?
So Keenan and Associates,
We shop for
they
plan,
have,
okay.
yes, they have sent us information, and they will provide that pre-tax ID.
Looks like we're going with option one. Okay, not the last item, but almost last item. Possible cancellation of the July meeting. We need to decide whether we need to meet, and this is an action item.
So the Pacifica School District Board of Trustees has adopted a schedule to meet every 3 weeks. The week in July 16th is a regularly scheduled meeting. Many times our families go out of town, etc., as do some of us. Therefore, it's my recommendation that we cancel our July meeting.
The only comment I would make is that we potentially need to then call a special meeting at some point, because we have an open director of facilities position. And should we find a candidate that we would, I think we would want to hire them and get them on board as quickly as possible. So just put that out there as a need.
I think we find 3 of us available at any given moment. It's pretty easy.
And I have to say, we're shooting for the June 18th meeting. We think that we're going to be able to do that. If not, then we're making a call to see if there are people available at the end of June.
All right, so is there a desire to cancel the July meeting?
Do you need a motion?
Yes, we need a motion and a second and a vote.
All right, well then I move we cancel the scheduled July meeting.
Second.
All in favor? Ooh, Wednesday night off. Okay, guys. All right. Okay, and we're up to future agenda items, of which I did not hear anything. Is there any need?
I do have, under future agenda items, I think Matt at the last work study wanted to have the topic of suspension and expulsions, do an update or something like that. So we might embed it in one of our reports, but I wanted to note that. I will be bringing forward a portion of our board policy maintenance. It's starting again. So in June, I will bring my set, and then we will have second reading when we come back in August, and then you'll get a new set in August. And the last thing I wanted to note on the events to attend at the bottom of future agenda items, our welcome to Pacifica will be August 23rd, and it'll be 10 to 12 p.m.
PM?
Yeah.
It won't be till 12 a.m. That's good.
And they're going to try to shift it to a more like coffee, but a little coffee gathering, and then dismiss them before lunch. And we were going to have it at Lindemar last year. Evidently, every year the soccer program has their tournaments on that same day at IBL and at some other schools. And Lindemar is not a school that they use. So We thought that they, yeah, move it to Lindemar, so, because of parking, it was cumbersome.
And also, not something to go on the agenda, but it's something we discussed earlier that they had used in their determination for the health committee. Could we get a copy of that spreadsheet that gives a breakdown of plans of how many single, double, multiple things? Just that was something that they referenced. I was
Anything else?
Yeah, just on future events, just to just remind everybody that tomorrow afternoon is a CSEA and LSEA retirement event at the Surf Spot at 3:30. And then, Sandy, is there any resolution of where Cabrillo 8th grade graduation is going to be, so I have like a location to go to?
You just have to stand out on the highway and yell.
Post yourself at Cabrillo and follow the crowd.
Well, because it's not at Cabrillo, that's really not even helpful. That's not one of the choices.
You can follow the teachers as they leave.
Okay, perhaps we could do better than that.
You want something a little bit more.
Just, call me crazy. Just like to know
Where
to
you're
go.
supposed to be?
I mean, people have telling me where to go for a long time, and I just assume not to have that be a topic for discussion.
So good.
Okay. Anything else? All right, meeting adjourned.
Wow.
9:44 or something.
Yeah, it's like,